Now, the 2023 polls are concluded. There are lessons, indeed, that should have been learned from that particular experience. A civil rights group, the Center for Transparency Advocacy, says that with the inclusion of the use of technology in the amended electoral laws, the conduct of the general elections in Nigeria recorded slight improvements despite the challenges faced by the independent National Electoral Commission, that's INEC. The Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts is recommending, amongst others, that the president should not be the one to appoint the chairman of INEC. Now, joining me live to talk more about the lessons learned from the polls, I have with me in the studio Udegbunam, who is a resident researcher of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, and also Dr. Emeka Ononamadu, who is the former INEC resident electoral commissioner in Enugu State. Good to see you, Doctor, and good to see you. Let's start with you. This is a report that is just out there, and perhaps we should start by talking about how we arrived at this collation and conclusion.
Thank you. I think we have two reports here. One is the compendium of observers' report that were deployed to the field during the 2023 general election by CTA, Center for Transparency Advocacy, as well as another research work on the perception of citizens around election and election responsibilities, particularly as it relates to key stakeholders that run elections in Nigeria. That report, part of it is a long overdue report of 2019 general election.
Oh, since after the 2019 election.
Building also into 2023 general election, because we believe that one thing must lead to another, and understanding the challenges and the successes of previous election provides us a very clear view of what needs to be done in the future. And I think that's exactly what was presented today.
Now, for the Abuja School, this must be a very, big task getting to this point in our national life. Take us through the process of arriving at this, conclusion of asking that the president stop being the appointer of INEC chairmanship of INEC.
Okay, so the Abuja School, before the elections, established the election observatory. So it's monitored the pre-election processes that led to the election, and election itself, and the post-election. Now, we realized that most of the issues, the key issues we identified during the whole process was all about INEC's ability to, conduct a free and fair election. And then we realized that of all the issues we raised, the key issues we raised about voters having to vote freely and fairly, about accurate collation of results, and then having a fair condition for voting, we realized that INEC failed in these three criteria, and it shows that they failed a democratic test. So, having failed that test, we also have to narrow it down to who the INEC chairman is, knowing that we have a partisan chairman who was appointed by a president, and knowing that you are appointed by someone who is in power, you of course want to work on his part. So all the failures that were identified clearly showed that the INEC was clearly trying to, work towards the part of making sure that the ruling party remains in power.
Let me bring in the former rec. You've been doing this. I see the smile on your face, and you want us to go beyond the normal, which has not worked for us as a people, and that is why we are where we are at the moment. Listening to Oge, let's bring it back to the Electoral Act. And how much of it have you seen us implement as a country?
Prior before now, I think the challenge, even beyond the report presentation, is the fact that I have a personal opinion that we've run democracy or elections for 24 years. But how much time have Nigerians practiced elections? We seem to be so autocratic right from homes.
So we had democracy.
Let me
but again, I wanted to repeat that. Go ahead.
And people practice elections once every 4 years. Even in their homes, they don't allow decision making to be holistic. So these are the burden, the national burden, which our report tried to extrapolate and give a value around going back to see what we'll do with our voter education, national orientation around elections. The second point that it brought out was the fact that not too many people understand the role of each stakeholder in election business. What's the role of the political parties? What's the role of the security agencies? What is the role of INEC as well as the role of the voters themselves? Until we understand the calibrations of these roles, we will be in position to apportion blames where it is deserving. And not, this bandwagon of when you fell election. I had a challenge when I was the resident electoral commissioner, and the political party man who led the protest against me was among those who gave me award when I was leaving. And I say, how about this? He said, no, this is politics now. We can use that to begin to create a momentum across the country that Nigerians walk into and then begin to have a shock. What we want to do is, what are these rules? Because we did a survey and asked citizens, what is the role of INEC? Some of them have not come across the law that,
So now let's speak about the recommendations now.
Good. Now, the first recommendation is that there must, as a matter of urgency, start on time to begin to educate Nigeria about the role of every stakeholder to any election process. It's not about me, the resident electoral commissioner, giving an autocratic order across and it happens. The police should know their roles. When they fail, Nigeria should blame them. INEC, people know their roles. When they fail, you know the boundaries. Because the thing is like creating a huge, data that seems to be conflicting. And, people will say, no, go back to OIS panel report. Some say, oh, no, let's look at the appointment processes. We're not going to appoint angels. We're going to appoint Nigerians. In fact, I am bold to say here that INEC facilitates election while Nigerians conduct elections. Because during election, we hire over 1.5 million ad hoc staff.
That's an indictment.
It's not an indictment. It's the fact that there are roles and responsibilities. Okay? That by the time I do a whole lot of logistics, which is the major aspect of INEC work during election day, Nigerians that were recruited on ad hoc basis take up. So we need also to look at the offenses, electoral offenses tribunal or commission that will do a speedy trial of electoral offenders. Because sometimes when people get away with electoral offenses, or it takes quite a long time for such prosecution to happen because of the legal encumbrances, you discover that people will begin to fear. And that is why we dropped from 94 to 24,000. There was no problem before the election. So you couldn't say it was INEC responsibility. There was voter education, but the loud, fearful noise coming from political quarters, coming from opponents, and also the inability to clearly deal with political or electoral violence quickly so that others can learn from it. Is the resultant effect of what we are suffering.
Let me bring in Udegbunam again here as we're trying to wind down. What else are we missing out from that report?
Okay, so the report tries to, like I said earlier, tries to explain how INEC failed to manage the election. And now he said something about cutting down the number of registered voters from 94 to 24. You realize that the use of technology sort of helped to manage the whole situation, looking at the Electoral Act where it says accreditation, voter registration and all that. So because of the electronic use of technology, we had there was an impact on reduction of voters. Now, what was the cause of the high population of voters and all that? You could look at underage voting. You could look at multiple voting, where people could vote multiple times. But with the use of technology, you see that, yes, there was a reduction in that. So the report also tries to, suggest some recommendations like electronic transmission of results from polling units. There should be a law that all results must be transmitted from the polling units. Any result that it's not transmitted from the polling unit should be nullified. Not a situation where you say, okay, we'll have to take it to the local government or the state headquarters or something. No, so all reports should be transmitted electronically.
Dr. Emeka Ononamadu, let's close on this, and it has to do with the outcome of this report. It mustn't gather dust somewhere in the shelves. It must be looked into because this is about Nigeria. What's your group doing to ensure that this actually gets the attention that it requires?
Yes, I think as we speak, the report has already been dispatched to critical stakeholders. We dispatched some to the National Assembly, particularly highlighting the areas that requires electoral law amendments. If you look at what happened during the last political party primaries, you can understand why there was a low participation of voters. Because from the entry point, which is the political parties, there were few people that were allowed to participate in their primaries. But election is all about large numbers. A lot of people felt disenchanted, and because of that, some pulled out. Some whose candidates found their ways to election decides to stay. There are too many multiple factors that could cause low participation, not necessarily INEC. I was part of that process until July 2022. I saw the energy and the volume of publicity that was done. And if you look at how we managed to incrementally make CVR a national, it wasn't like that. It was ad hoc voting process before one-off.
So you're saying that that the internal democracy must be strengthened before we now come to the larger sphere of our national life?
Simultaneously. It must happen simultaneously. And also the responsibilities of publicity. We have to look at all institutions. In fact, if you ask me, I would say all government agencies, all major institutions must invest in political education of Nigerians in that area, led by the National Orientation Agency. Because people don't understand this very clearly. The laws are there, but it appears that people don't want to sit down and look at the laws. It is only when you look at the laws you will know that, yes, this is the area INEC performed creditably. The question is, what law have they broken? That's the issue.
It's a question that must be answered.
Sure.
I think it's a fine place for us to leave it for now, because we'll have to revisit this, because I think the era of having recommendations gathering dust on the shelves, we must have to deal with that. So Dr. Emeka Ononamadu and Udegbunam, many thanks for coming on Arise Prime Time.
Thank you for having us.